The city lights were bright that night, but something else held the attention of every person inside the hall. There was a quiet tension in the air, the kind that makes people look around without knowing what they are searching for. The event was huge, and everyone knew it. Hollywood's brightest night had arrived, and the place was filled with faces the world admired. But the story of the night was not about the crowd. It was about one simple moment that began when Keanu Reeves walked through the side entrance and saw Sandra Bullock standing alone near the stage steps. From the very first second the scene pulled people in. Sandra stood with a calm smile, but her eyes looked tired, as if she had carried too much for too long. She tried to hide it, but something in her face showed a quiet struggle. Viewers would feel it right away. Something was not normal with her, and Keanu felt it too. He slowed his steps without planning to. He felt a pull inside him that he did not fully understand. The hall was busy with voices and flashes from cameras, but Keanu only saw her. He had seen her many times before, but this time something inside him paused. It was not love in a dramatic way. It was something softer, a quiet admiration mixed with concern. It was the kind of feeling that makes a person take a breath and pay attention. The hook of the story began here, because as Keanu walked closer, he noticed something others did not. Sandra's hand lightly trembled as she held a small card. It was her speech note. She had read it many times, and yet she looked unsure. She rarely looked unsure. Sandra was known for her confidence and calm nature, but tonight something was different. Keanu gently moved toward her. She lifted her eyes and saw him. Her smile widened a little, but it did not fully reach her eyes. Viewers could sense the tension. There was history between them, not a loud history, not a dramatic one, but a quiet and respectful bond built over years of working together and understanding each other in ways only a few people could. Sandra looked at him and said in a soft voice that almost got lost in the noise around them. She said she was fine, but Keanu knew she was not. He had always been good at reading people. Tonight that sense was sharper. He took a slow step closer and lowered his voice so only she could hear. He asked if everything was okay. Sandra looked away for a moment as if searching for the right words. Her eyes softened. She finally admitted something simple but heavy. She said she felt like she did not belong here tonight. That moment hit hard. It was something many viewers could relate to. The feeling of being surrounded by bright lights and loud praise while deep inside feeling unsure. Sandra was a star, but even stars have moments of doubt. Keanu stayed silent for a few seconds and then gave a small, warm smile. He told her she belonged more than anyone else in this room. His voice was calm, confident, real. It was not meant to fix everything, but it reached her in a way she needed. The twist began when a staff member rushed toward them and told Sandra she had to go backstage right away. Her segment had moved earlier. She looked startled. This was unexpected. She had less time to prepare than she thought. The pressure inside her grew fast. Keanu saw the fear flash across her face. He knew that look. It was the look of someone fighting to stay steady. Without thinking much, he placed his hand gently on her shoulder. It was a simple gesture, but it carried strength. She looked at him again, and this time her eyes were softer. She trusted him. She always had. He said she would walk through it with grace just like she always did. He said he had seen her face challenges that were far harder than this. He reminded her that she never let fear win. The audience watching this story would feel the emotion rise here, because the moment was not loud. It was quiet. It was human. It showed that even in a world filled with fame and bright screens, people still needed kindness. Sandra nodded. Her breath steadied a little. She whispered a thank you and started walking backstage. But just as she took her second step, she paused. She turned back to look at him. The crowd around them blurred in the background. She said something surprising, something that would stay with the viewers. She said she wished he knew how much his presence helped her. She said it in a soft voice, but it carried a deep truth. Keanu blinked slowly. It was not a statement he expected, but he understood it. And for a second his expression changed. It softened in a way that showed feelings he often hid: admiration, respect, and a quiet protectiveness. The part ended with Sandra disappearing behind the curtain and Keanu standing there watching her go. He did not move right away. Something in him knew the night was far from over. Something told him this moment was only the beginning of a long emotional path neither of them had planned. And deep inside, Keanu felt something he had not felt in years. A sense that tonight something important would happen. Something that would test both their strength and their bond. The air backstage felt different the moment Sandra stepped behind the curtain. It was quieter than the main hall, but the silence felt heavier. She walked with steady steps, yet inside she was trying to keep herself together. She held her note card close to her palm as if it could protect her. Something about this night felt strange. Her mind kept repeating Keanu's words, but fear still pressed on her chest like a slow weight. The audience watching the story would feel the rise of tension here because the moment she thought she had control, something unexpected happened. A coordinator rushed toward her with worried eyes. He told her the teleprompter screen had a problem. Her script might not appear on time. This was the worst news she could receive. Sandra froze for a second. She had practiced her lines, but tonight her mind was not as steady as usual. She felt her heartbeat rise. She closed her eyes for a moment, trying to breathe calmly. She remembered Keanu's voice telling her she never let fear win, but fear was stubborn. It pushed back. Meanwhile, Keanu remained out in the hall. He stood near the backstage entrance instead of returning to his seat. Something inside him refused to walk away. He kept looking toward the curtain as if the moment he turned around something would go wrong. People greeted him as they walked past. He smiled and nodded, but his mind stayed fixed on Sandra. He replayed her words in his head. She wished he knew how much his presence helped her. That sentence felt heavy in his chest. He had always admired her strength. He had always seen her as someone full of light. Hearing that she leaned on him, even in a small way, touched him deeper than he expected. Suddenly, he noticed someone from the technical team whispering urgently to another staff member. Their expressions were tense. Keanu took a slow step toward them and politely asked if everything was okay. The staff member hesitated but then explained the teleprompter issue. Keanu felt a sharp worry shoot through him. Sandra was about to speak soon. She needed that script. He knew she could speak from her heart if she had to, but he also knew she was in a fragile place tonight. One more unexpected problem could shake her more than usual. He made a quick decision. He asked the staff if Sandra had been told. They said yes, but they were still trying to fix the screen. Keanu felt his body start to move before his mind fully decided. He walked toward the backstage curtain. Inside, Sandra stood alone in the corner. She was trying to memorize her lines again, but her hands were trembling more now. She hated that she felt this way. She had always been strong in public. She had always kept herself together even when life got heavy. But tonight something inside her felt delicate. It was the pressure, the memories, and the feeling of being watched by thousands. She whispered her first line softly, then the second. But the third line would not come. Her mind emptied, her breathing tightened. She felt the old familiar fear rise, the fear of disappointing people, the fear of not being enough. She leaned her back softly against the wall, trying to keep herself steady. But then she heard footsteps approaching. Slow, calm, steady, she looked up. Keanu stepped inside the backstage area. The low lights cast a soft glow on him. When his eyes found hers, she felt something inside her settle without explanation. He asked if she was all right. She tried to say yes, but her voice cracked. Keanu walked closer, not too close, not enough to overwhelm her, but close enough to show he was there, really there. She told him the teleprompter might fail. She finally admitted she was scared that her mind would freeze on stage. She hated saying it out loud, but Keanu listened without judgment. He listened like every word mattered. Then he did something unexpected, something viewers would not see coming. He gently reached out his hand and asked for her note card. Sandra blinked surprised, but she handed it to him. Keanu looked at the small card for a moment, then looked back at her. He said he would read it with her, slowly, calmly, line by line, until the words felt familiar again. Her eyes softened, something inside her warmed, she nodded. Keanu stood beside her and read the first line in a slow, steady voice. Sandra repeated it. Then he read the next line. She repeated that too. He kept going with calm patience. Every time her voice shook, he paused and waited until she found it again. The scene felt intimate but not romantic. It felt honest. It felt human. It showed how much kindness meant in moments of quiet fear. After a few minutes, she began repeating the lines without the tremble. She felt her breath returning. She felt her mind opening. Keanu smiled when he heard the strength return to her voice. He gave back the note card and said she would do great. Then came the twist. A staff member called from the stage saying her name. It was her time. The audience inside the hall started clapping as her introduction played. She took a step toward the stairs, but then stopped. She turned back and looked at Keanu. The world around them felt loud and blurry, but for a moment everything inside her was quiet. She whispered something only he could hear. She said she was going to be brave because he reminded her how. Keanu felt a warm wave inside him. He nodded gently. He told her something simple but powerful. He said she was stronger than she believed and he would be right there watching her. Sandra took a deep breath and walked toward the stage. The lights grew brighter as she stepped into view. The crowd waited. The pressure rose again, but her heart stayed steady, because she knew someone out there believed in her more than she believed in herself. Keanu stood at the side of the stage watching her every step with quiet admiration. He did not move. He did not blink. He let his presence be her silent support. The moment Sandra reached the podium, she looked out at the sea of faces. She felt her chest tighten for a second. Then she looked to the side where Keanu stood. Their eyes met for one quick moment. And everything inside her calmed. The story would continue from here. The applause felt like a soft wave rolling across the hall as Sandra stood at the podium. But even with the cheering around her, she felt the weight of silence inside her chest. The lights were bright, the room was full, and every eye was waiting for her first word. She held the edges of the podium gently, her fingers brushing the cool surface as she tried to ground herself. For a moment she looked down at her note card. The words seemed tiny, like they were drifting away from her. She felt the fear rise again, but then something inside her whispered to stay calm. And almost without thinking, she turned her gaze toward the side of the stage. Keanu stood there in the shadow of the curtain, his posture steady, his eyes calm. He did not speak. He did not signal. He simply stood like a quiet anchor, reminding her she was not alone. That small moment gave her strength. Viewers would feel it. They would feel the shift inside her. Sandra lifted her head again, looked at the audience, and opened her mouth to speak. The first line came out soft, a little shaky, but real. Then something unexpected happened. The teleprompter flickered. The words on the screen jumped for a second. A whisper of confusion moved through the technical team. Sandra saw it, her breath caught. The screen froze completely. The crowd had no idea what was happening, but Keanu did. He saw the tiny flicker in her eyes. He felt the tension hit her again like a wave. She stood still, too still, and for one terrifying moment her mind went blank, exactly like she feared. The hall felt suddenly silent inside her ears. She could not hear her own breath, she could not hear the crowd, she could not hear anything. This was her nightmare, being on stage unable to speak. But then something happened that no one expected. Keanu stepped forward. Not onto the stage, not into the spotlight, but just one small step from the curtain, enough for her to see him clearly, enough for her to feel that he was with her. His mouth moved silently. He repeated the first line she had practiced, the line they had rehearsed together backstage. She saw his lips form each word slowly. Sandra swallowed. The fear inside her cracked just a little. She breathed in and gently repeated the line out loud. The crowd listened. Then she saw him mouth the next line, and she repeated it. Her voice grew stronger. After the third line, she no longer needed him. Her voice found its rhythm. Her words flowed naturally. She spoke from her heart, using the card as a reminder but not a crutch. The audience could feel the emotion in her voice. They could sense the honesty, the struggle, the courage. Her speech was not loud or dramatic. It was gentle and full of warmth. She spoke about gratitude, about resilience, about the moments when people feel small and the people who remind them they are not. And as she spoke those words, she glanced at Keanu again, only for a second. But in that second, something emotional passed between them. Not romance, not something heavy, but respect so deep that it carried weight. By the time she finished her speech, the hall felt different. The applause this time was loud, real, full of admiration. People stood from their seats, clapping with genuine respect. Sandra stepped away from the podium with slow, steady breaths. She walked down the stairs one step at a time, her heart still pounding, but in a relieved rhythm. As soon as she reached the bottom, Keanu moved to her. Not quickly, not dramatically, but with a calm purpose that showed how much he cared. She reached him before the curtain hid them from the crowd. Her eyes were bright, her cheeks warm, and for the first time that night, her smile reached her eyes. She whispered that she almost froze completely. Keanu nodded softly. He told her he knew. She said she did not know how she kept going. Keanu looked at her in a way that felt grounding. He said she kept going because she had the strength all along. He reminded her that he only gave her a little nudge. The rest she did herself. She shook her head gently and said something unexpected. She said he always did that. Even years ago, she said he always gave her a kind of calm she never found anywhere else. Those words hit him deeper than he expected. He looked away for a moment, almost shy with the weight of it. He was not used to hearing such things. But before he could respond, a crew member rushed toward them and told Sandra she needed to head to the press section for photos. Sandra nodded, but turned back to Keanu first. She placed her hand lightly on his arm and said in a soft, sincere voice that she would be back. Then she walked toward the hallway with the crew. Keanu stood there watching her leave again. He took a deep breath. Inside him, something felt warm and complicated. He had always admired her as a person, but tonight something else had awakened. Something quiet but powerful. He felt responsible for her in a gentle way. He felt protective of her without any reason or expectation. And he felt something else too, a strange sense that the night was not over. The story was only getting deeper, the emotional tension stronger, and the bond between them was shifting in ways neither of them planned. The hallway outside the press section was bright and crowded. Cameras flashed one after another, and voices overlapped like a restless wave. Sandra walked into the space with a steady posture, but her chest still carried the echo of the moment on stage. She answered questions with soft confidence and posed for photos with her gentle smile, but inside her mind, she kept replaying Keanu's quiet support. Every time she blinked, she saw him mouthing her first line. Every time she took a breath, she felt the calm he gave her. The press session went smoothly, but the noise around her felt overwhelming. Lights were too bright. People stood too close. She kept her smile alive, but her energy began to drop. When the final camera clicked, she gave a polite nod and stepped away from the photographers. The moment she reached the quieter corner of the hallway, she placed her hand on her chest and let out a tired breath. Meanwhile, Keanu remained backstage near the shadowed wall. He waited longer than he planned to. He knew she was with the press, but he still felt something inside him telling him not to walk away. He checked his phone, he looked around, he tried to distract himself, but his thoughts kept returning to her speech and how bravely she handled it. After a few minutes, he saw her walk back through the hallway toward the backstage area. Her steps were light, but her eyes looked worn out. The moment she saw Keanu, she gave a small smile that softened the tiredness on her face. Keanu felt something shift in his chest, a warm weight. Sandra walked up to him and said she survived the cameras, but barely. Her voice held a mix of humor and exhaustion. Keanu chuckled softly and told her he knew the feeling too well. They shared a moment of quiet understanding that no one around them noticed. But then a sudden noise broke the calm. Two event managers rushed past them, urgently discussing something. Their expressions showed worry. Sandra and Keanu both paused. The managers mentioned a power issue affecting a section of the stage lights. It could delay the next segment. Sandra looked confused. She thought the rest of the event would go smoothly, but something about the hurried tone of the managers felt unsettling. Keanu sensed it too. He turned slightly to face the direction they came from. Before either of them could say anything, a staff member ran toward Sandra. He looked stressed. He told her the seating arrangement for the final segment had changed, and she needed to be relocated fast. Apparently, her seat was now next to a guest she did not expect to sit beside. A guest who had once spoken harshly about her in a public interview years ago. Sandra's smile faded slightly. She remembered that interview. She remembered how it had hurt her even though she never talked about it. She had moved on, but sitting beside that person on such an emotional night felt uncomfortable. Keanu noticed the shift in her expression. His eyes softened with concern. Sandra tried to hide her discomfort by brushing it off casually, but he saw right through her. He asked gently if she wanted him to walk with her to the new seat. She paused for a moment, then nodded. Not because she needed protection, but because his presence made everything feel easier. They walked through the hallway together. People stepped aside as they passed. Keanu walked a little behind her, not wanting to draw attention away from her, but close enough to offer silent support. When they reached the new seating zone, the guest she had been worried about was already seated. They looked up as Sandra approached and gave a polite smile that felt too stiff to be real. Sandra returned the polite smile, but her body tensed slightly. Keanu watched closely. He stayed near but out of the spotlight. Before Sandra could take her seat, something unexpected happened. The guest made a subtle comment, not rude but sharp enough to hurt. It was disguised as a joke, but Sandra knew the intention behind it. The kind of remark that reminded her of old wounds she thought had healed. For a moment she froze, her eyes lowered. She did not want to create a scene, she did not want to react emotionally. She took a slow breath and kept her face calm. Keanu saw everything. He saw how the comment hit her. He saw how she tried to hold her composure. His jaw tightened slightly, not with anger, but with quiet frustration that someone would try to dim her confidence on a night she had fought so hard through. The tension in the air grew. Viewers would feel it, the emotional heaviness, the sting of an old memory. Then Keanu stepped forward, not aggressively, not confrontationally. He simply placed himself beside Sandra in a way that made his presence unmistakable. His eyes met the guest's eyes just for a second. There was no anger in his expression, only calm firmness, a silent message that Sandra was not alone. The guest shifted uncomfortably. Their smile faltered. They understood the message even without words. Sandra felt the shift behind her. She looked up at Keanu with quiet gratitude. The tension in her chest eased a little. She took her seat gracefully, and Keanu sat beside her even though it was not his assigned seat. No one questioned it. No one dared. The lights dimmed slowly as the next part of the event began. Sandra sat with her hands folded gently. Keanu sat close enough for her to feel supported without drawing attention. As the stage lights brightened again and the host's voice echoed across the hall, something unexpected stirred inside her. A realization. She turned her head slightly toward Keanu. She whispered something barely audible. She said he had no idea how much his presence had changed her night. Keanu looked at her with soft surprise. He whispered back that he did nothing special. But she shook her head gently. She said he did more than he knew. The hall grew quiet as the final performance began. Music filled the space, warm, gentle, powerful. Sandra listened with calm eyes. Keanu listened too, but he kept glancing at her quietly. Neither of them said another word, but something in the air between them had changed. It felt deeper, stronger, more meaningful than before. And neither of them knew that one more unexpected twist was waiting before the night ended. The final performance filled the hall with soft music that drifted like a warm breeze. The crowd listened in calm silence, but Sandra felt the melody moving through her differently. It felt heavier, sweeter, deeper. Maybe because her heart had been shaken so many times tonight. Maybe because Keanu sat beside her, offering a kind of quiet protection she had not expected. She looked forward, but her thoughts kept circling around everything that had happened. The speech, the teleprompter, failure, the press, lights, the sharp comment from the guest. Each moment had pushed her to her limit, yet every time she feared she would fall, something or someone had pulled her back. Someone. Keanu sat beside her with his posture still and steady. The glow from the stage lights touched his face softly. He looked calm, but his eyes held a mixed feeling he had not spoken out loud. Care, concern, and something that felt like quiet admiration. The performance ended slowly, and the hall filled with applause again. Sandra clapped with everyone else, but her breath stayed soft. She was trying to process the night, but before she could settle, the host announced something surprising. They announced a short backstage tribute video that would feature Sandra's career journey. A video she did not know they planned to show tonight. Her eyes widened. She felt her heartbeat jump. She did not expect this. Keanu turned to her instantly. He saw the tension rise again in her chest. She whispered that she had no idea they prepared a tribute. She said she did not feel ready for old memories tonight. But now the video was already starting. The screen lit up with clips from her early years. Scenes from her first films, her first interviews, her first award shows. Each moment held a piece of her past, moments she had lived but forgotten to feel. She swallowed hard, her hands folded together tightly. The video continued, showing her difficult roles, her emotional scenes, her brave choices. Then came moments from a period when she was struggling quietly. Most people didn't know she had gone through that phase, but the video reflected it in gentle imagery. The hall watched with admiration, but Sandra felt her throat tighten. She felt too exposed, too vulnerable. Keanu saw her sinking into her thoughts. He leaned slightly closer and whispered softly, asking if she was okay. She did not answer at first. Her eyes stayed fixed on the screen, but they were glassy, full of memories that hurt and healed at the same time. Then the video reached the part that made her heart stop. A clip from one of her interviews years ago where she talked about feeling lost, feeling overwhelmed by fame, feeling like she was failing even when the world thought she was winning. The audience reacted with soft sounds of empathy, but Sandra felt her chest collapse inward. She remembered how hard that time was. She remembered crying alone. She remembered pretending to be fine when she was. Her fingers trembled, her breath slipped. Keanu saw it instantly. He gently moved his hand close to hers. He didn't touch her yet. He just placed his hand near enough for her to know she wasn't alone. She felt the warmth of his presence, and her breath steadied a little. Then something unexpected appeared on the screen, something Sandra did not recognize. A clip of Keanu talking about her. It was recorded without her knowledge years ago during a backstage interview. He spoke softly, saying Sandra had one of the kindest hearts he had ever seen. He said she lifted people without trying. He said her strength was quiet but powerful. He said working with her changed him for the better. Sandra's breath stopped. The hall reacted with soft gasps. Keanu froze. He had forgotten about that interview. He looked away, embarrassed, his cheeks slightly warm. Sandra's eyes filled with emotion. She looked at him slowly. He looked back uncertain, almost shy. The video ended with applause, but Sandra could not clap. She was too overwhelmed. She whispered Keanu's name very softly. He leaned closer to hear. She asked why he never told her he said those things. Keanu lowered his gaze for a second. He said he did not think it mattered. He said he only shared what he believed. Her heart softened deeply. She felt a warmth spread through her chest, a warmth she had pushed aside for years without knowing why. The audience kept clapping, but Sandra and Keanu sat in a quiet bubble. Then a stage assistant approached Sandra and informed her that she was needed backstage once more for a final closeout segment. She nodded, but her body still felt shaky from the emotional hit. When she stood up, she almost lost balance for a second. Not dramatically, just a small wobble from the emotional weight. Keanu reached out quickly and held her arm gently to steady her. She looked at him with soft surprise. He didn't let go immediately. He asked if she needed a moment. She nodded slowly. She whispered that she needed air. Keanu gave her a small, reassuring smile. He asked her to follow him. He guided her toward a quiet hallway away from the noise. The lights were dimmer here, the space calmer. She leaned against the wall and closed her eyes, taking slow breaths. Keanu stood beside her, silent but present. After a moment, she opened her eyes and looked at him. Her voice was soft when she spoke. She said tonight felt like too much. She said she felt exposed and fragile, and she didn't know why the tribute affected her so deeply. Keanu listened fully. He didn't interrupt. She said she didn't like people seeing her broken moments. Keanu stepped a little closer. His voice was warm and steady. He told her she was not broken. He told her she was human. Strong and human. He said the video didn't show weakness. It showed truth. Sandra felt tears rise, but she blinked them away. She whispered something she never planned to say. She said she wished he had been around back when she was going through those hard years. Keanu's heart tightened. He looked at her with soft regret. Then he said something unexpected. He said he wished he had been there too. That one sentence hit her deeply. And before she could respond, a staff member called her name loudly. She needed to go right away. She took a deep breath and stood straighter. Before leaving, she turned to Keanu and gently touched his hand. She whispered, "Thank you," and then she walked away. Keanu watched her go again with that same quiet feeling in his chest. Something growing, something changing. He had no idea the biggest twist of the night was still waiting for both of them. The final segment of the night was about to begin. Sandra walked toward the stage entrance with slow, steady breaths, but her heart felt heavier than it had all evening. The tribute video had opened memories she had buried. Keanu's old interview had revealed truths she never expected, and the weight of the entire night still pressed on her shoulders like a quiet storm. The hallway leading to the stage was dimly lit. Soft shadows followed her steps. She paused just before the curtain. She closed her eyes for a moment, trying to steady her mind the way Keanu always helped her steady it. Then she heard footsteps behind her, calm, steady, familiar. She turned slowly. Keanu stood there with that quiet expression he always wore when he was worried, but trying not to show it too strongly. He said her name softly. She answered with a tired smile. She told him she was all right, but the truth was visible in her eyes. She was holding herself together with thin threads. Keanu stepped closer, not invading her space, just offering his presence the way he had done all night. He asked again if she felt ready. She nodded, but her breath trembled slightly. He lifted his hand gently and offered it for a moment without touching her. She placed her hand in his. It felt natural. It felt grounding. He whispered that she would finish the night with the same strength she had shown in the beginning. He said she had already survived the hardest moments. She whispered back that she only survived because he stayed near. Keanu's eyes softened. He looked at her with quiet emotion that he rarely allowed anyone to see. Before he could say anything, a staff member called her name again. It was time. Sandra let go of his hand slowly, but she kept the warmth of that touch inside her chest. She walked onto the stage, and the crowd welcomed her with bright applause. The final segment was short. She was asked to present an ending message about unity, hope, and the beauty of working together in the film industry. She spoke calmly, gracefully. But then near the end she paused. Not out of fear this time, but because she felt something she needed to say, something honest, something real. She looked at the audience and said that people often see stars as perfect, as strong, as unshaken. But the truth was different. Everyone, even the people on the biggest screens, needed support. They needed kindness. They needed someone to believe in them when they doubted themselves. She spoke about resilience, about fear, about quiet strength. But then she added a sentence that surprised everyone, including Keanu, who watched from the side of the stage. She said sometimes one person changes your entire night without the world ever noticing. She said sometimes one person becomes your anchor without asking for anything in return. The hall fell silent. People looked around wondering who she meant. Keanu stood perfectly still, but something warm rose in his chest. Sandra finished her speech, and the applause filled the hall again. She stepped off the stage and walked into the backstage light. The moment she crossed the curtain, she saw Keanu waiting exactly where she had left him. She stopped, he stepped toward her. Their eyes met, and everything that had happened that night, everything that had been said and unsaid, filled the air around them. She let out a shaky breath. He reached out, gently touching her arm in a steadying way. She said the night had been overwhelming. He said he knew. She said she felt strange, as if she had opened parts of herself she never planned to reveal. He said he understood. Then she asked a quiet question. She asked why he stayed with her every step tonight. Keanu took a breath, a slow, honest breath. He said because he cared, not in a loud, dramatic way, but in a real way. He said he had always admired her and always respected her. He said seeing her struggle tonight made something inside him refuse to step away. Sandra's eyes softened. She felt the honesty in his words. She said she didn't know she meant that much to him. He gave a small smile. He said she always did, she just didn't see it. The silence between them grew warm, peaceful. She stepped a little closer. She said his interview from years ago stunned her. She said hearing that he believed she had one of the kindest hearts had stayed in her mind ever since it played on the screen. Keanu lowered his eyes for a moment, then looked back at her with a calm expression. He said he meant every word. For a second they stood there in a quiet world of their own. The noise of the event faded behind them. The lights above them dimmed. It was just them, two people who had carried each other through a long, emotional night. Sandra took a breath and spoke softly. She said she felt stronger because of him. Keanu shook his head gently. He said she was strong long before he arrived. He said all he did was remind her of it. She gave him a small, warm smile, the kind of smile that comes from a deep place. The organizers called out announcing the end of the event. People began exiting the main hall. Voices echoed in the distance. Sandra and Keanu walked out together through the backstage hallway. The night air outside was cool and gentle. The crowd slowly dispersed while long beams of light shone across the street. Sandra stopped under one of the lights. Keanu stopped beside her. She looked up at him and whispered that tonight could have broken her. But instead it became a night she would remember for the rest of her life. Keanu looked at her with a soft, steady expression. He told her that she made it through because she were brave enough to face her fear. She said she only had that bravery because he stayed with her. They stood there in shared stillness. No rush, no tension, no confusion. Just gratitude and respect deeper than either of them expected. The night was finally over. But something new had begun between them. Something wordless. Something real. Something built from kindness, courage, and quiet understanding. And both of them knew. Hollywood's brightest night had changed them forever.